What's up everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Matt, Cryptic if you prefer. Today we're going to be working on a new rigging tutorial. I've been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes and a lot of people have been asking me to please show them how to do some stuff. So we're going to start kind of a new series, but also I'm going to mix it in with a bunch of other content, but we're going to go over some rigging stuff and we're going to go over specifically some of the stuff that I did for my tank rig. In this video we're going to go over organizing and rigging this turret. If you want the files for this, they're in the link in the description, so you can practice along with me if you want to. So if you're new to rigging, this is going to be an awesome way to learn about some of the different constraints inside of Maya and how to use them with set-driven keys and other tool sets in Maya. So hopefully you've already got the model downloaded, but the first thing we're going to do is take a look at it. So mine is in a group, but we're going to go ahead and ungroup this because we're going to actually set up a different type of organization for this. So we have our auto turret here. So this is going to be a turret that both rotates, pans up and down, fires. We'll have some flipping handles on the actual ammunition canister to give us a little bit of control there. And then we're not going to rig this belt because this belt was meant to be a solid state belt, so it doesn't like flex and move around. But let's go ahead and get started. So I want to preface this real quick. I will be using a plugin in this video. If you don't have this plugin, it is called BS Control Rigs. If you don't have this plugin, there is a link in the description on how to get it. It is completely free off of Gumroad, but there is a little bit of an issue with modern versions of Maya, and there is a fix in the comment section on how to fix this. I won't go over that in this video, but if you want to do that, if not, just make your own curves. It's really, we're not going to be doing anything crazy complicated with it. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe because there's going to be more tutorials on rigging and other things within Maya, Substance Painter, and other worldly 3D apps. Cool, so here we go. All right, so we have our turret. So we need to establish what we're gonna do first. So one of the first things you really wanna make sure is that you're following an organizational structure. So we're gonna select all of our geometry. We're gonna do Control G to group it. This is gonna be our auto turret geo. And then we're gonna create another one. We're gonna just go up here and then create a group. This is gonna be a null group. We're gonna call this auto, we'll just call this control curves. And in both of these groups, we're gonna do another group. That group is going to be auto turret. So now we have this little self-containing package of stuff. So now we get to figure out what we're gonna do with this. We're gonna end up splitting some of this up a little bit. So first thing I like to do is I like to plan what movements I have and what I need to control. So I know, for instance, this part needs to go up and down. I know the turret itself needs to go in, and I know that the entire body needs to rotate. So we're gonna create kind of our first couple of control curves. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up BS Control Curves, and this is the app right here. And from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create our first one. So I know that I need a circle. So I'm gonna just go ahead and create a circle on world, and I'll expand this out a little bit. This is gonna be our main rotation curve. So we're gonna move this up into our control curves. You can do that by just middle mouse clicking it and then dragging it in the outliner. I'm going to name this turret rotation. Okay, and then let's look at this one. I'm going to do another circle. I'm going to rotate this one about 90 degrees, or negative 90. And we need to go into our side view to make sure that this is where we need it to be, because otherwise it's going to kind of pivot weird. Alright, cool. So this actually, you can see it pivots right here. That's not where it created the curve, so we want to make sure the curve is actually pivoting where it needs to. So we'll hold V to snap, and we'll snap it right to the center there. And that should be almost, yeah, it kind of screwed up a little bit, that's alright. We can scale it up so we can just see it. And then that looks like it should be almost a little bit centered. There we go. Okay. You can get it perfect if you want to. For this, I don't really care. All right, so that's going to be our up-down control. So we're going to move that up there. Same group. Turret. Up, down. Okay. And then we need to look at the firing. So let's look at the firing rig. So for this one, I always like to use these two arrow curves. So we'll just do world. And again, if you're not using BS control rigs, just create your own. It does not have to be these fancy ones. You can also probably find a host of other plugins that do this for you too. This is just the one I've used forever. So we're going to put this right about there. So that's going to control the actual firing. And then for these handles, we need to do these handles. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back up here. We're gonna do a circle world. That is way too big, so we're gonna scale that down. We're gonna rotate it -90. Okay. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and go into our side view. Just make sure you're lining all this stuff up as you can. This one's obviously not going to be super perfect, but it just needs to flip, so it's really not doing anything crazy. Make it just a tad bit bigger so I can actually see it. And then Control D, we're going to move this back here. All right, cool. So that takes care of most of the controls. We got one more that I want to do is this one, but right now it's getting kind of hard to see stuff. So I like to kind of go through and color these, and that's one of the nice things about BS Control Rig is you can literally just click your rig and then click a color and change the color. Otherwise you have to edit these manually inside of Maya. If you guys want to change these yourself, go to your attribute editor, and then in here you should be able to find this drawing override section. Click that, and you can change the color right here. So you can see that that one's blue because I already changed it to blue. All right, so, and then these little guys, we will just change these to red. So usually I try to follow some sort of pattern. So if it's like a rotation, I'll do like a red, or if it's like an up down, I'll do blue, back and forth movement. So any other additional movements, we'll do stuff like that. But okay, so let's do this last one real quick. We're gonna select this guy, and we're actually gonna, hold on, we need to move these up here because I got a little carried away. So this is rear handle, front handle, cannon, fire. Okay, so let's do our last one. We're going to do one more circle, and this one's going to be a little bit different. So we need to rotate this again, just -90, and then we're going to actually pin it to the back here. So what I want to do is go again into my side view, because this is how I modeled this and this is how I wanted it to function. Move it right there, and then I'm going to use V again to just snap to the corner, and then we'll just kind of center that again. Okay, cool. So we'll scale this down, because we're actually not going to be touching this one. This is going to be an automated kind of component. And we'll just call this cover flip. Okay, so we have a bunch of stuff going on here. This is gonna work out really well. So what we need to do is we need to start setting up our parent constraints. Our parent constraints are going to be really important to kind of get everything kind of driven and working. So the way parent constraints work in Maya is very different than the way the parent command works. The parenting command creates a hierarchy, and it moves things around, changes all sorts of stuff, and it will actually break when you do stuff like this. So we want to do this separately. So what we can do is we will select, we're going to work on the cannon first. So we're going to select our cannon fire, and we're going to select our cannon. We're going to go up here, we're going to go parent. We can look at the options just to make sure everything's good to go. Maintain offset, you want to make sure is on, otherwise your pieces will move all over the place, and hit apply. So you can see the difference here, right? When we parent that, it's still controlling it. But if I were to do the parent, so like if I go up here and I just hit P, you can see that selects the object and it also moves it under the curve. We don't want that. That's not the sort of behavior we're looking for. So we're gonna go ahead and back that up. Make sure that's clear. All right, cool. So next thing is we're gonna grab this body here, or we're gonna grab this curve, grab the body, we're gonna go constrain and parent. And then here we'll grab this curve, constrain and parent, G, I'm just hitting G to repeat the action. And then these handles are gonna be a little bit different, and then the same with the rotation. So these are all our single animated items. They don't need to be grouped, they don't need to be changed or anything like that. The next thing we have to establish is what does need to be in a group, because a lot of this is going to be animated in one section, and you don't want to parent hundreds of objects to one controller. So let's look at this. So what we could do is we'll select everything we know that needs to be parented to this. Just verify that everything's good. Everything looks solid. All right, sweet. So from here, we're gonna do Control G. We'll call this turret base, geo. And I'm just gonna move this under the main group just so it's kind of organized. But this group is actually what's gonna get parented to this curve. So we're gonna grab the curve, grab the group, constrain and parent. So you can see now when we grab that, it's still gonna control the turret, but it doesn't have to have a ton of connections to it. Okay, so the next thing is the handles. Same kind of setup. Control G, and then if you want to, and you probably should, honestly with any of these, is you should just center your pivots. So we'll go to poly modeling, just center. Same here. Control G, center pivot. So rear handle, geo, front. This is a good thing to practice because this is going to help you keep your mesh and everything organized. But same sort of setup. We're going to grab this guy. We're going to grab the rear handle. And we're going to go constrain, parent. And then we're going to go grab the front handle and the front handle and the same thing. Okay, so we have all this working, but nothing's technically working together. Everything's just kind of moving around doing stuff. So we want to start linking this together. First thought would be, let's just add more parent constraints. You don't want to do that because the more constraints you add into a system, the more that system's going to break. So for instance, if I say take this, or we'll take the base and I'll grab this one and I will parent this. So we'll go constrain and parent. So I'm animating this, right? So I'm going to move that up and then suddenly I want to move this. You can see how that snaps right back to where it was. This is a problem that we need to avoid, and this is a big mistake that a lot of people make when they're rigging. They get frustrated because it's automatically overriding what's going on there. So we want to back out of that. So how do we solve this without breaking everything? We kind of do a little bit of manual parenting. Okay, so we first need to grab this. This is our turret up-down control. This needs to live underneath turret rotation. This is where we will do actual parenting, because now when I rotate this, move it up, and then I rotate this guy, you can see it keeps its information and it's no longer overriding. This is how we avoid that override. So we'll do the same thing here. This needs to live underneath turret up down. So same setup. I can move these. I can do whatever I want to with these. And they won't reset. Okay, cool. So that is how you can build a successful kind of rig that works together. So we're going to continue doing this. This one is going to live underneath turret rotation. And the same with these rear handles, turret rotation. So you can see kind of how our structure works here. Turret up down is its own thing, and then everything else is underneath the rotation curve. So now when I rotate this entire curve, everything should rotate with it, minus the base because we're not using the base. So that gives us that control. But now we want to make this just that much more simple to work with. So we're going to use some things called set-driven keys as well as some other different types of constraints. All right, so we're going to go ahead and create a new curve. I'm going to open my BS control rigs again. Whoa. We're going to create a cross, or a thin cross. And I'm going to grab the turret barrel, and I'm just going to do to world, and this is going to be purple. I choose purple because it's enough to let me know it's a different control. All right, so we'll move this out and we'll scale this down. So this is gonna be our aim constraint. This is how we're gonna set up how the turret aims. So we're gonna grab this guy. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna set up the aim constraint to the rotation of this guy. This is where you gotta get a little bit more granular. So we're gonna go to constraint. We're gonna go to aim, options. So we know for a fact that when we grab this and we rotate this, it's rotating in the Y. So we want to only constrain to the Y. So we're going to select, change that to Y, and hit apply, and close. So now when I grab this and move this around, the turret's going to follow that, but it's not going to rotate anywhere else that it's not allowed to. So this constraint only controls that axis. We're going to do the same thing now to the turret portion. So we're going to grab this guy, and then we know, just to double check, this is rotating in the Z. So we will grab the cross, this, constrain, aim, and then we're going to go Z and apply. So now when we take that same constraint and move it around, you can see we get all of this new control without having to do anything else to it and without having to adjust every single curve. So the next problem we want to solve is this. So when I move this up, this isn't doing anything. So we can do a constraint. Same way, we can actually just grab this guy, or we can grab this guy, and do G again, because it's the same kind of control. And so now it's going to rotate and work together with the barrel. It's just going to average together. And if you wanted more like granular control, you can kind of go in there and change and tweak settings, but for the way that I built this, this is what I wanted it to do. So I wanted this to just kind of lift with it. So you can see now we've got all that control. That's super awesome. And I can move it and rotate and move this. This is a bad example, but you can see how that stays in its position. Okay. So that brings up the next problem. When we rotate this, you can't just grab this and move this anymore. Like it's always going to be kind of a game of shifting around. So we want to kind of set that up so we don't have to do that. So we're going to set up a set-driven key. A set-driven key is going to allow us to control that using a pre-configured animation that we don't have to actually adjust anything on, and it will stay the same every single time. So in its inherent state, what we're going to do, we'll grab the, we'll actually use this one. We're going to do edit, add an attribute. It's going to open up our add attribute window, which is this guy right here. So we're going to call this turret fire. We want to make sure it's on float scalar. That's fine. We're going to do a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 25. This is going to be the amount that we can move the actual control. So we'll hit add, and that gives us our first attribute. So how do we actually use this? Well, this is where it gets kind of fun and also can get very confusing. We're going to go up to key, as long as you're in your animation set, go to set driven key and then set. This is going to open up the set driven key window. This window is going to be super important for setting this up. So we know that our driver is this plus. So we're going to load the driver. We're going to click turret fire. This is the attribute that we want to adjust. Next, we're going to select the actual firing mechanism and load that as the driven. So we know when I pull this back, that's moving in the X translate. So I'm going to set the X, and we're going to go ahead and set a key. What I can do is I can select the cross. We're going to crank this to 25, and then I'm going to move this back into the gun, and we're going to key. So now we have this really awesome sort of control where we can grab this and we can move this in and out, and you can see when we move the turret, no matter what direction we're aiming in, we can constantly use that, and it's going to move only in the direction that we originally set it up in. So that gives us the set driven key there. So next thing is, let's go ahead and look at our little handle flips. So we're going to do the same thing. You can set them up individually if you want to. For this example, I'm going to set them up as just one to save a little bit of time, but we're going to run through the same thing. We're going to go add attribute. I'm going to call this handle flip, and then minimum 0, maximum 25. And you can go maximum whatever you want to. It doesn't really matter. I just tend to stick between 25 and 35, so I don't have to like zoom all the way over, and hit add. So same sort of setup here. We're going to reload our driver, which is going to be this guy. So we have our handle flip now. And in our driven, we're going to load 2 of them for this example anyway. So I'm going to grab you, and I'm going to grab you, and we're going to load as driven. And so I know for a fact that, you know, with these guys, I got to rotate them, and they rotate in the Z. So in our set driven keys, we're going to go here and here, and we're going to grab the rotate Z. We're going to hit key for 0, and then we're going to go ahead and adjust that, crank it up to 25, and then we're going to go ahead and rotate these real quick. So I'm going to rotate there, and I'll rotate there, and then key. And so now we can set up this really cool animation where the handles flip when it fires, because when it's firing, it's a lot of concussive force, so you can have your handles flip out. And again, if you want to get granular with it, you can do each handle individually, which is how I rigged them on the main model itself. But for this example, I just wanted to do one. And that basically takes care of this rig. This rig now functions fully just with the control of this one little cross. So if we wanted to do a real quick animation, right? I can kind of aim it up here. I can set a key, go all the way to, we'll do 300. We'll do 180. And then we'll set a key. And then throughout this entire process, what we can do is we can actually come in here and key this. So this will show you kind of how to animate with this as well. So one thing that's an issue here is that when we keyed this object, it keys everything else. So now that we have that animated, what we can do is we can kind of go in here and add some turret fire to it. So I accidentally left my turret fire on 0, and we need to actually correct that. So we're going to go back to the first frame and just key that. And that shouldn't, yeah, so we're going to have to do the same thing on the last frame because it adds keys. So that was my mistake. Not a big deal, but all right, cool. So now we have this movement. So in here, we can just add a turret blast. So we'll set a key, move a couple frames, go to 25, set a key, and then move a couple more frames, and we will move it out, set a key. And we can do the same kind of thing. So key selected, pull it in, key selected, and pull it out, and key selected. So you can see now how we have the turret doing the animation for us, and we can go and add those sub animations and sub keys. Now, the way this is set up, it gives us full control over how we want to actually animate this and work with this. But one of the other things you can do is, if you don't want to deal with like kind of going back and forth on those keys, set those attributes up on whatever's not being animated. So if you have an object that's not really being animated because this doesn't have any keys, so we can actually individually add those attributes to the base of this and then animate those keys separately if we want to. That way we don't have to deal with setting keys and going back and going forward. It's really dependent on how you want to set up your rig, but this gives us a totally controllable rig that allows us to do whatever we want to with it. But that's going to be it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something new. I hope it was actually helpful. Constraints can be a very confusing topic, as well as the organization for rigs can be as well. So I hope this kind of gives you a little bit of a dive into it, and then in later videos we're going to explain even more in-depth stuff that we can do with different types of constraints and rigging. I wanted to start this video series off small because this is a large topic and it's going to take a while to cover this. So do me a favor, if you made it this far and you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It helps the channel, as well as leave me a comment. Let me know what you want to learn next. I will try to prioritize different things over other videos if there's enough demand for them. One thing I will not be going into just yet, because it's not something that I am super hyper familiar with, is character rigging. So if you're looking for character rigging, this won't be an awesome place to learn this stuff. We're going to focus mainly on like hard surface assets. We're going to do some stuff with IK/FK bone systems, but that's going to be at later videos because I'm not ready to create content on those because I don't have a full enough understanding on those. But everything else we're going to go over. I'm going to teach you what I can, and hopefully you learn more. And if you want to take it a step further and help support the channel and what I do here, you can join me either as a member on YouTube, Twitch, or you can join me on Patreon, where the monthly fee that you pay supports the channel. You get access to free stuff and hopefully soon some free exclusive videos. I just haven't had a lot of time to focus on that platform. So with that said, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.